as well, and that is Congressman Horsford from Nevada.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good evening, and I want to first thank the co-anchor, my distinguished colleague, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, for your tremendous leadership in anchoring this special order hour, and to, of course, our chairwoman, Joyce Beatty, for her tremendous leadership in leading the Congressional Black Caucus, which represents more than 17 million black constituents across this great country. And we represent not only black Americans, but all Americans, diverse Americans. And what those Americans have been telling me in my district back home in Nevada's 4th District is it's time for us to build back better and to do it in a more equitable and inclusive way. So tonight, we are here to bring attention to the fact that we are standing at a crossroads of history. With the bipartisan infrastructure deal and the Build Back Better Act, Congress has the opportunity to finally rebuild our economy, to deliver huge tax cuts to the middle class, and to lower the cost of living for families on everything from child care to health care. The question is, will our colleagues on the other side of the aisle work with us to deliver these important investments on behalf of the American people? Now, we've seen transformative legislation like this before, when Congress worked to rebuild the American society in the wake of the Great Depression. But never, and I mean never, have people of color benefited like they could under the Build Back Better Act. I think it's our Majority Whip, Jim Clyburn, who has talked about the history of these other measures and how they actually left entire communities out. They left women out. They left communities of color out. And we are still dealing with the systemic issues of being left out from those policies for far too long. So I want to again thank our leadership, because it wasn't just this bill and the drafting of this bill, and yes, President Biden wrote this bill. He wrote it with the support of his team at the White House, but with a whole lot of good input from colleagues over here in the Capitol, including here in the Congressional Black Caucus. And I know that there are colleagues of mine who have been working on key elements of this bill for a very long time, and I know that they, like myself, are ready to act on behalf of the American people. So I look forward to having a little bit of a what do we call it, a colloquy with my colleague from Wisconsin, because I believe that it's so important, Mr. Speaker, that we talk about what's in this bill. For far too long, people have been focused about a top-line number, about the process, about the personalities here on the Capitol Hill, and whether certain factions are with the bill or working on the bill. Well, with all due respect, I want to talk about policy, and the policy that affects people, the people in my district, in Nevada's 4th, and the people all across this country. Why? Because the Build Back Better Act will cut child care costs. For families that are eligible under this bill, they won't pay more than 7% of their household income to cover child care, something that women and communities of color desperately need as we talk about the workforce shortage and the inequities that are in our workforce. Well, what sense does it make when someone who has to work, and I'll give you an example, Miss Rosetta, who is a constituent of mine, she's a home care worker. I had a roundtable with her and some other home care workers, and they shared with me, Rosetta did, that when she started her job several years ago, she got paid $9.50 an hour. Today, she makes just over $10 an hour. Think about that. For several years, this woman, who's a home care worker, who goes into elderly citizens' homes to take care of them, to make sure that they're fed, that they're bathed, that literally she changes their diapers. She is their companion. And she hasn't been given a raise of more than 50 cents over the course of several years. That is unconscionable. And so under the Build Back Better Act, we're actually investing in home care workers, not only to help make that profession what it should be, an honorable one that pays them what they're worth, but also equips them with the support that they need for their own families. Why is it okay for them to take care of other people's families and then not even have the resources and the means to take care of their own? It also gives every child a head start with universal pre-K for 3- and 4-year-olds. Mr. Speaker, we've talked a lot about how we help young people get the start they need in life. And we know that by investing in their early success, it improves academic skill attainment, allowing them to read at an early age. Reading is essential to every other subject that they have to learn. It will ensure that they improve their graduation rates, which improves their life chances of success. So to my colleagues on the other side, when you say that we're spending too much in this package, are we spending too much for that home care worker, for Rosetta and so many other people like her? Are we spending too much to give working families the support they need to be able to afford childcare? Are we spending too much so that every child in our country has a good start through universal pre-kindergarten? These are but just a few of the benefits. Now, before I go on and I yield to my colleague here, I want to talk about one other important element, because we've spent a lot of time on the Build Back Better. But you know what? I'm also for the bipartisan infrastructure deal. Why? Yes, it's going to create millions of good-paying union jobs. And yeah, I have no problem saying union here in this body, because it's the unions that help build the middle class. And if we're going to build this country back better, we need to do it with unions at the center of it. But not only does it do that, it expands broadband access, providing broadband connectivity in our households, in rural communities and in urban areas. My district covers 52,000 square miles. I have parts of Las Vegas and North Las Vegas. They need broadband. But I have 6 rural communities throughout Nevada, many of them that do not have adequate broadband. In fact, it's a broadband desert throughout certain parts of my rural communities. They need the investment. It also makes the largest federal investment in public transit in history. Mr. Speaker, maybe more members of Congress should have to ride the bus, and they would understand the investments that are in this bipartisan infrastructure bill. But yet, the minority leader on the other side is literally trying to whip votes against this bipartisan infrastructure bill, a bill that 19 Senate Republicans voted for, along with every Democrat. Now it's our turn to vote for it, and they won't work with us to deliver the largest investment in public transit in history? You have constituents that rely on public transit. I have veterans. That's the only way they can get to their doctor's appointments. Seniors, college students, working people. And this has direct implications on the climate crisis as well. When people have to stand outside for hours in order to catch a bus, that affects their exposure to everything from heat to, I don't know, snow in the Wisconsin. We don't have that in Vegas. And finally, it will remove lead from the water our children drink and other vulnerable populations. These are just 3 of the very important provisions that are in the bipartisan infrastructure deal. So I'm ready to vote for these bills, Mr. Speaker. I wish we could schedule the vote tomorrow, because these are investments that people in Nevada's 4th District are depending on. they sent me to Congress to solve problems, to make their lives better. And these two bills do that, and they do it in very significant and meaningful ways. In fact, it's probably the largest investment in people in a generation, and we have a chance to do it. And it's the Congressional Black Caucus, among others, that are leading. So I want to yield to my colleague, Congresswoman Moore. And let me ask you, because I know as a member of the Ways and Means Committee, you have been a champion on the racial equity. You've been a champion for the poor, particularly women, women of color who have been disproportionately affected by this pandemic and its recession on our economy. And so what is it in this bill that makes you so excited to vote for it, and how will other communities benefit beyond just some of the things that I've touched on?
Well, thank you